What is up everyone, my name is Jasper and in today's video I wanted to talk about Ezoic's big data analytics. Now Ezoic is mostly known for serving ads on your website. I mean, it's the primary reason I use Ezoic is just to serve ads on my site and make some extra money. But Ezoic is a little bit more than just that, because Ezoic also has an extensive database for every one of your sites that's connected to Ezoic. Now at first this may look a little bit daunting because there's so much stuff to look at, but in today's video I'm going to be showing you guys how I use big data analytics and how I'm using it to find new topics to write about, how I'm making outsourcing a little bit easier, and how I see what kind of topics are paying me the best. So honestly, I could talk about this for a little more, but I think the best way is to actually show it to you guys. So let's dive into the computer and let me show you guys how I use Ezoic's big data analytics to my advantage. So we're here on the Ezoic home screen, and this is your typical dashboard from Ezoic. I'm going to be using the Dutch boating site as an example again. Now don't worry if you don't speak Dutch, I will be translating everything that is necessary, but to be honest, most of these Dutch words really don't matter anyway. But what you do from here is, this is of course your dashboard, then you click on analytics. So now we're here in analytics and you can see that there's a lot of stuff to look at. You got, even only this screen right here, you got revenue hourly, weekly, monthly. You got your traffic data, audience behavior, content. A lot of stuff to look at, but I'm going to show you the two that I think are the most important. So first off, let's just go to this one right here, content. And this is one of the things that I think is the most interesting, because this kind of lets you plan around already existing clusters and already existing content that is performing really well. Now this is something I always try to do every single month, or maybe once every 2 months, but it's to go to the category section right here. Now this is something I always try to do when I'm doing keyword research. Now I'm not doing keyword research every day because I simply don't have enough writers to support that. But when you're doing keyword research, it's of course very important that you have a topic that you're doing the research on. Now what you can do in the category section here is you can scroll down a little bit, and right here you've got all of your categories. So just to kind of quickly translate, this is just general info, this is rules, this is sailing routes, this is those little rubber boats, smaller boats, maintenance, sailboats and motorboats. But these are the categories that I have on the site. Now what you can do is you can look at how many page views they get, but that's really not the most interesting thing. So what we do want to see is the page RPM. So we can grab that and take it over here for now, and then we click it. And now you can see that maintenance is the category with the highest RPMs. So on average, an article in the maintenance category will have an RPM of $16.50. Now that is a very solid RPM, especially for a Dutch site. You can also see that motorboats have an RPM of $15. And you can see that these little rubber boats only have an RPM of 6 and sailboats only have an RPM of $6.60. So what you can do from here is you can kind of take the high paying categories and do the keyword research on those, create more clusters on those topics. But you can also try to kind of balance it out, because as you can see, like motorboat has an RPM of 15, but it only got 3 page views, which really isn't that much. So maybe it's just giving you some information based on just these 3 page views. On the other hand, you can see that general info, the category of general information, has an RPM of nearly $10, but it gets the most amount of page views per week. 660 page views per week with an RPM of 10. Now you can kind of balance it out by not only going for the ones that are earning the most, but also for the ones that get the most page views. So this one, this category makes up for nearly 50% of all of my page views on the site. And it has an RPM of 10, and I say that is pretty respectable. So what you can do from here is you can kind of make a collaboration of the ones with high page view numbers and decent RPMs, as well as the ones with high RPMs. Now does this mean that I'm no longer going to be writing about rubber boats or sailboats simply because they have low RPMs? Of course not. The way that I look at this data is, this is primarily data that I use to outsource articles. When you outsource articles, you of course want to make money on those, and the best way to make money on those is to kind of have an idea of what you can expect from the RPMs of that article. So if you're going to invest, let's say $40 for a 1,000-word article, you would probably much rather spend that on an article where you know that the average RPM for that category is $16 instead of $6. You will be making your money back much faster. And those lower RPM articles are some that you can write yourself, or maybe once you've covered most of the high RPM topics already. So this is primarily something that is super helpful if you're looking to outsource. But this is of course also super helpful if you don't outsource, because you now have an idea of what categories are earning you the most money. Now you can also click on your landing pages. I'm not going to do that because it will show off the articles in my URL. But when you click on landing pages, you can once again click on the RPM and it was sorted from highest to lowest. Now the main advantage of that is that you can see which one of your articles has the highest RPM, and you can maybe build some extra clusters around that specific topic. So for example, let's say my best article would be is your boat required to be named? This is something that I've written on. Maybe this one has the highest RPM. So I can see that this is an article about rules. Maybe there's some buyer intent behind it because people would need to get the name stickered onto their boat. So maybe you can build a cluster around that specific topic. So that's something that's interesting, something to keep in mind. But honestly, I think the category one is much more valuable. But this is something that you can kind of base a few new clusters on. Now we can also go to content and then content age. This is also something that is pretty minor, but it's still pretty cool to see. Right here you can see how old the articles are. So the articles or the content that is 105 weeks old is apparently bringing in the most amount of traffic. So the content that's 105 weeks old brings in 36% of the traffic. What you can do is, as you can see, the more recent numbers like 68 and 67 months old, they bring in only a little bit of page views. So what you can do is, maybe during those weeks I wrote in a different way. Maybe I covered some topics that were more popular, there was more volume behind it. Maybe I was writing in a different way that was more engaging or more informative. You can kind of look back if you're plateauing or something like that, you just can't seem to move forward. Maybe look at this chart here and you can see the articles when they were written and what you were doing right at the time. Maybe you can kind of try to do that again. And lastly in here, I wanted to go to page details, which is also something that's pretty cool. And this kind of shows you the correlation between the RPMs and the word count. So you can see right here, articles between 0 and 250 words. I'm not sure, I don't even have those, but probably something like about me pages or something like that. But right here you can see that the articles between 1000 and 2500 words get the most amount of page views. The articles between 2500 to 5000 are getting a little bit less, in fact a lot less. 80% of the traffic is coming from those 1000 to 2500 word articles. Once again, you can click the page RPM and get it over here and click it again. You can see that also the RPMs are the highest for the 1000 to 2500 word articles. Typically, the longer the article, the more ads will show, the more you will earn from that one article. So that's why the larger articles are of course on the top. But one thing that's very interesting to me is that these right here, 1000 to 2500, are smaller than the 2500 to 5000 word articles. Still, the RPM is about 30% higher on those. So what this shows you is if you're writing new content, if you're outsourcing new content, you can see that the content between these word counts are earning you the most money. Now lastly, there are of course a lot more things that you can look at. You can look at your landing and exit pages, which will show you where people are landing on the site and from which articles they are most commonly exiting. These are things to keep in mind. Maybe you can make the high exit articles a little more interesting, add some more pictures, add some more information, maybe some tables, some graphs. See if you can make the article a little more helpful so that less people will be exiting from that article. But honestly, there is a lot of things that you can take away from this data section. My personal favorite being the categories one, because this really allows you to build a plan around certain categories that are earning the most. It shows you which articles and which categories you should probably outsource because they're the most profitable. This is really something I've been using a lot and I will keep using a lot, of course. And that's really what I wanted to show you for the content section. And the other interesting thing that I wanted to show you is right here in Yield and then add location. Now for this I am going to swap over to a different site of mine that has a little more volume behind it so it can show you some better numbers. So we're here and what you can see here is the way Ezoic works is you can either have a plugin that places the placeholders for you or you can do that manually. Now I've done it manually for this website and I've made a video on how I'm doing that, which you can find on my channel. But what this shows you right here is what ad locations bring in the most impressions, bring in the highest RPMs, bring in the most views. So what you can do right here is let's just grab the RPM section and the revenue section and let's sort them to highest. So these are now sorted to highest, and to my surprise the under second paragraph placeholder is earning me the most money. It is accountable for 19.23% of the total earnings of this website on Ezoic. And that is not something I would have expected. Typically bottom floating, as you can see here, it's a close second. Typically I expect that one to be very high. I expect the floating sidebar to be pretty high. But to my surprise again, these sidebar ads are performing pretty poorly, at least according to my expectations. So what this section really shows you is how your placeholders are earning you money. You can also do the same for RPM, so let's click on that real quick. Right here you can see that the highest RPM placeholder is once again the under second paragraph. It's almost a $5 RPM. Then you got the sidebar floating one, which is the one I expected. It is the second highest RPM placeholder. Apparently it isn't viewed all that much. As you can see here, the impressions are only 1,300, which really isn't all that much. It's a 3.8% of the total amount of impressions. So what this information shows you is that I may have to do some optimizing for the sidebar floating. Something really isn't working, or maybe my expectations were just wrong. But what this really shows you is all of your placeholders, which are the ones that earn you the most money, which are the ones with the highest RPMs, and with that data you can make some decisions. For example, I was thinking of switching themes and I was going to go to the popcorn theme, which I really like. But the thing is with the popcorn theme is that the default is that there is no sidebar. And the sidebar is of course where the sidebar floating is going to be. And I was always under the impression that that was the highest earning ad position. Right here I can see it's the second highest, but it doesn't amount to all that much money. So if I were to switch to popcorn theme and I were to remove the sidebar, it would only cost me $6.15, or in other words, it would cost me 6% of my total income. Now that is something that is pretty manageable. On the other hand, if I wanted to get rid of the under second paragraph placeholder, it would cost me 20% of my total income. So that's probably something I do not want to touch. So that's really how you can use that data. It kind of shows you what placeholders can be messed around with, which ones are over-optimized or under-optimized, and which ones you should probably leave alone because they account for a large portion of your income. So that's how I use Ezoic's big data analytics. Now this is one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of Ezoic. Their RPMs are of course nice and the extra income is of course nice. It definitely provides a nice motivation boost in the early stages, but their data sets can really allow you to create some in-depth content plans. So the way I use it is I go to the categories section, see which of the categories are earning me the most money, and I start with those of course because those make me the most money. And then from there I pair that with the landing pages. So I know which category is earning me the most. Now let's look at the actual articles within that category that are earning me the most. From there I take those top articles and then I create an entire cluster around those articles with the hopes that they are also catching those high RPMs. Now if they don't, they will at least boost the rankings of the original article, because building a cluster around it, of course there's going to be a lot of interlinking done. Of course it also makes it much easier to outsource because you at least have a sense of what you can expect. It's no longer a guess in the dark. So I really hope you guys learned something from this video. Using Ezoic's big data analytics may require some effort in getting used to, but honestly once you've got the hang of it, I think that this is an important part to incorporate within your content strategies. But without further ado, if you guys enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like or subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!